I'd like to call to order the June 10th, 2019 meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners to order. We'll start out with a safety minute. If we need to evacuate the building, we would go out the back doors. To the right is a set of stairs that goes out to the front of the building. To the left, there's a set of stairs that goes out to the back. Please move away from the building and watch as you cross through the parking lot and cross the street. There's a defibrillator out front to the right side of the reception's desk. We do have a number of police officers here this evening who I'm sure know how to use a defibrillator, but it is self-instructive. If you have any things, please put them under your chair in front of you or under your chair beneath you so that if we do have to evacuate, people can move freely through the paths between the chairs. Next item on the agenda is the invocation. I'll call on Commissioner Melton for that.
Thank you, Mayor. Instead of a prayer tonight, I was thinking, what would I want to do or what would I want to pray about in an open forum? And I thought how busy I've been lately, and I know the vast majority of the people in the room and sitting out there, we've got a lot to be thankful for, and I don't know what you've got to be thankful for, and you don't know what anybody up here has got to be thankful for. I don't know what all you got going on in your life, but I'm pretty busy right now. And I suspect everybody else is moving 90 miles an hour. So if we could just, instead of a formal prayer tonight, if you guys don't mind, just bowing your heads and just be quiet for a minute, be still for a minute in your own way. Just remember something that you're blessed with, something you're thankful for. If there's somebody who needs a blessing or really needs to be thought about, everybody can rattle off a few names of somebody who needs help. So if you don't mind, let's just take 30 seconds or a minute, and I'll let the mayor wrap it up. But let's just take a minute, be quiet, remember somebody who needs remembered, and think about everything we're blessed with.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'll turn to the manager for any items that are to be added to the agenda.
No items to be added to the agenda, Mayor.
Okay. Next item is public comment, and we did not have anyone sign up for that. So we'll move on to item number 8, which is, or excuse me, item number 7, which is recognition of the Planning and Zoning Board. Mr. Camp?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Here on the front row, we have Larry Whitley. On the second row, Carrie Lamson, Scott Query, Jonathan Clayton, Mike Foster, and our chair, David Weiser.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have recess for public hearing. Items 8A and 8B. Do we have a motion to go into public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The board is now in public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Board. The first item is a special assessment for Acacia Street, Cochran Woods Lane, Jerry Lane, and Lightwood Drive, all located in the Streamside subdivision. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor. This is similar to what we went before with another subdivision where the road and the storm system and other elements were not put in correctly or were not completed, and the neighborhood petitioned for special assessment to be done to pay for those improvements so that we would take over those roads for maintenance. As was typical, I included the work to be done along with our larger paving program to try to get better costs for doing these things, getting these done. The bids that we received for the paving program were much, much higher than my estimate. My estimate was roughly $2 million for paving this year. The lowest bid came in at $3.89 million. What I would like to do is to not move forward with a special assessment this time, since that is much more than what we had told the homeowners it would be per lot if we did go forward with the assessment. Give me time to go back. I've been talking with the contractors to see ways that we could lower the costs, and I'm planning to go back out and rebid this and hopefully come back with lower costs to bring to the board in the next several weeks.
Okay. Are there any questions for CJ? So you're referring to item 12A, we would not take action on that particular item this evening.
That would be my recommendation,
Okay.
yes.
All right. Any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board? Mr. Miller?
Thank you. CJ, how much, did you just quote the dollar value for all of our paving or for just their neighborhood?
No, that was for all the paving.
Can you go over the numbers for just their neighborhood, please?
Sure. I'm gonna have to go back off of memory, which is never good. But from what I remembered, it was roughly $90,000. What my original estimate was, there's roughly $40,000 in bond. The bids came in at $157,000
Okay,
versus the 90, so that's substantially more.
I see. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I got a question.
Oh, Mr. Higdon.
So what is the purpose of the delay? What do you hope to discover?
So I have talked to the contractors in ways that we can lower our overall
Okay.
estimate, bidding via quantities rather than lump sum, allowing them to do certain things like milling the streets before they do the FDR. All those should lower the price substantially, and that's for the overall paving project, which would then lower the cost for this project as well.
And can you expound a little on your bullet point number 2 up here? Proceed with the assessment at a lower percentage. How would that be done?
So the way that the law is written, the assessment can be made at less than 100% of the total cost. The less than 100% can be assessed to the neighbors or to the people in the subdivision. Historically, we've never done that, but that is an option. What that would be doing, obviously, is instead of having the cost for those neighbors in the neighborhood, it'd be passing it back to the citizens overall in the town.
Thank you.
Mr. Buckley.
Mr. Mayor, I'll ask CJ to correct me if I say something wrong, but the main effect is right now, the estimates, it would be approximately $2,200 that would have been assessed to the property owners per lot. And I think with this bid, it would be something closer to $7,500 per lot. So that's a substantial difference. So that's why he's asking for deferral mainly. And incidentally, Mayor, if this does occur that you do it, I would just simply continue this public hearing so that the public with the new figures would have a chance to have an input at that point and not take action on item 12. I would just continue that, 90 days, the public hearing, or
I hope
60
to have costs
days?
yeah, 60 days at the most.
60 days, yeah. That would be the better action to take.
Okay, so if we did that, then we would defer item 12A for 60 days as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Someone like to entertain that
Well,
motion?
you can do that, or you can ask if there's anybody here who wants to be
Here now,
heard.
okay.
And if they can't be here, in 60 days.
Okay.
Mayor,
Yes.
My preference would actually be shorter than that. I should have this out to bid and back within 30 days. So
Okay.
that- So 2
Just-
meetings from now.
Okay, so you sure you're comfortable with that? Okay,
That's even better.
okay. All right, any other questions for CJ at this point? Okay, so why don't we do the public hearing part, CJ, and then we'll come back
Public
and
comment.
discuss the action from here. Carrie, the attorney informed me that this is not a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Board. So,
He's a part of the public, though. I mean, if he
yeah,
wants
you
to
can
make
stand
comment.
up and make a comment, but we just won't do it as part of the Planning and Zoning Board. Okay. All right, so is there anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition to this special assessment? If you'd like to, you can come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name's Randy Nasser. I live at 2208 Ducks Back Lane, Waxhaw, North Carolina. I guess my question is, I just got a notice, I think I'm one of the, I got a letter in the mail on Wednesday that said, we're having a special assessment meeting tonight. It's been deemed that 11 of the 14 homeowners in here have petitioned to have the streets paved, and 100% of that cost is going to be shared amongst the property owners. And that's, oh, excuse me, the extent of my notice. I've never seen any of these figures before, and just kind of curious if we're going to have a delay. Is there a way that the people that live in there could get a notice so we could be even able to ask some intelligent questions?
Notices were sent out to all adjoining property owners, which you must own a lot there on one of those streets.
I do.
Apparently, yeah. And in the clerk's office, you're certainly invited to come in, and they will have information regarding this assessment.
The new, I guess the new figures or something. I guess I was being told.
Yeah.
You're going to be voted on tonight that you're going to pay something, but you don't know how much, and I didn't
Exactly,
have any idea what was
because
going on until Wednesday.
as you heard, the bids came in substantially higher than what it was estimated, and that cost was prohibitive to the property owners. So the Public Works Director is going to see if he can get, what he can do to make that contract bid come down, and see if we can get it in an affordable for all the property owners.
Which I'm fine with that. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how I can get notice or know what that is, so that if I can't come to the meeting, or if I come to the meeting.
There was a published notice in the newspaper, and then also a copy of the previously adopted resolution was sent to every property owner. And so you're certainly welcome to come to Town Hall, or to even call the Public Works Director and get information on it.
Okay, because I guess I never got a notice other than Wednesday afternoon.
Right.
that There was a meeting tonight, and there was no information. I'm just wanting to make sure. I guess I don't live in Matthews, so the notice came to me
I
Wednesday.
understand.
And
But they're getting ready to take action that would continue this for 30 days.
Okay.
You could get as much background starting tomorrow morning.
Okay, okay. All right, that's all. I just want to
Okay.
make sure we can ask questions. Okay.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support or opposition? Do you want to say anything, Mr. Lamson? You okay? Okay. All right. So do we have a motion for this particular special assessment to continue this for this public hearing for 30 days?
A motion that we continue this public hearing until we reconvene Monday, July 8th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So this will come back up at our July 8th meeting. Okay. The next item on the agenda, 8B, is application to amend the Unified Development Ordinance. And this was, public hearing was opened at our last meeting and was continued to this evening. This is to change the zoning from R12 to OCD and RBS on that certain property designated as 2026 Matthews Mint Hill Road and belonging to Richard and John Harkey. Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we last met, numerous concerns were raised about the zoning, and the applicants attempted to make some changes. We have an updated site plan we received this morning. The primary change you'll notice is the massing of the office buildings along Matthews Mint Hill. The building on, I believe that's parcel A, has been broken up into two separate buildings, so you've got a little bit better scale in that structure. It's not such a long building. The balance of the site is still the same format. You have the curvature in the road. The cul-de-sac is, there's still no cul-de-sac. It's a hammerhead turnaround termination. Some of the major changes have really occurred in the architectural notes. You'll see in the memo that's in the agenda package, the applicant is pursuing a craftsman or cottage architectural theme. They have provided some renderings to us earlier today, and I'll let the applicant present those to you in just a moment and kind of explain what their thinking was behind the architecture. But within those notes include inclusion of overhangs, brackets, and columns, 6-foot depth porches, I believe, on most of the homes, a flexible design standard request that would allow front porches to encroach 6 feet into the front setback, and 2-car garages that utilize either separate doors or large double garage doors with glass panels with decorative hardware to kind of give a more attractive front facade to the buildings. And one other item I wanted to bring up that I didn't get a chance to speak to at our last hearing date. Staff did recommend, as we discussed this with the applicant prior to submittal, that they look at an office single-family split here at the zoning line. One of those reasons is that just across the street you do have office condos. I believe that's Senna Drive that terminates. There's a berm there, so they don't have direct frontage, but you do see the office buildings there. And we really felt that that was a good line in the sand, if you will, to stop office zoning as you head further down Matthews Mint Hill Road. I will say, if the consensus this evening is that everyone's not comfortable, or if a majority of the board's not comfortable with office here, I think that would be a good determination to make this evening to give the applicant that direction, that they maybe need to move in a different direction if the board doesn't like office at this property. But as it stands, staff feels like that's a good compromise for the layout of this site, given some of the challenges that it has. I apologize, this is a short update for you. There haven't been a lot of changes, but I know the applicant does want to speak a little bit in a little more detail on their new elevations. I believe they've got a color rendering they want to share as well, this site. So,
Okay, well, let's see if there's questions for
Sure.
Mr. Camp. Mr. Higdon,
The number of homes is the same?
It is, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Query.
Mine's not a question, but you hit on the one thing, and it's not written that we won't have business out in that area. But the Cochrans out at Phillips Road had one of theirs business, and we've denied it continually. So I have a problem with the offices there, period. So,
Okay.
because I don't think it's fair to put the burden on one and not the other.
Any questions from the planning and zoning board from Mr. Camp? Okay. Will the petitioner make his presentation?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come back tonight. We were here last month. I think the message is fairly clear that there wasn't much of a wow factor, I think was the word that a few members of the board used. To try to give you a little background, one of the dilemmas on a small site is that builders are hesitant to spend a whole lot of front-end money trying to do design when there's not a whole lot of lots that you can distribute that cost over. And that's exacerbated when it's a rezoning, because then there's no guarantee that you're ever going to see that project. So the point being is that the petitioner does not have a builder under contract to build homes in this community. Now, the petitioner is a home builder, but he typically builds at a price point that's a little bit higher than what he would anticipate being here. But what we try to do is to come up with what we found are example houses that have architectural elements that the petitioner will commit to in the final construction documents. And that's, we actually I had about 40 or so pictures, and I narrowed that down to 15 that I sent to the petitioner with my top 10 recommendation. So they picked the six that are in here. And to skip around a little bit, as I kind of, to answer, touch on a question I was asked a minute ago, the number of houses. The site plan is currently showing 20 lots, which is the same thing it was showing previously. After looking at some of the water quality issues, et cetera, the maximum yield was 22. That has been revised to 21. So we're showing 20, but there's an absolute max of 22. That's partly dependent on what the BMP would look like. The elements, this thing's always smarter than I am. The top one, yeah. What you see in, there is no red done. Now there's red. What you see in all these houses is that they typically have a little bit wider eave, overhang treatment. They all have some type of porch or entry feature. Let's see, of those 6, actually only one of these 6 has double garage doors, but it's kind of hard to see. But in every case, the doors either have sort of fake hardware, so like they're carriage doors, this one and this one, or at least they have lights. So what we're trying to do is to find houses that exemplify how we can break that front up so it's not just a mass of garage door. I think one of the comments that the mayor said, which was echoed by other members of the board, is that these houses look just like everybody else's houses they show up with. And that's certainly not the intent. And what we're trying to illustrate is that while there are certain features of each of these houses that are similar, at the same time, each of them are different. To take exception to something else that Jay noted, when we made our submittal on, I think, the 29th, there was a note, it was actually development note 7G, that said all houses would have a porch and that porch would be 6 feet in depth. And then we started looking at the houses, and what we found, again, this thing's, come on. For instance, this house just has an entry stoop. It doesn't have a full porch, and that stoop is actually about 4 feet by 4 feet. This house has a similar stoop, but it doesn't project in front of, like the one on example 6. This porch, I have to remember which ones these are now. This porch and this porch, I think, are 6 and 5 feet respectively, and I think the same on the bottom. So the one thing that we realized, and like I said, I had about 38 or so of these pictures, is that while they're very similar in style, that at the same time they're all different. And I think part of the board's objective is that you don't want all these houses to look just alike. So putting a 6-foot porch across the width of the house on every one of them, even if you change the gables or roof line, it still has some difference. So our thinking was that by allowing, so we have modified that note, and what, I'm not sure if this is what's in front of you, but we modified that note 7G to say that a minimum of 75% of the lots would have a porch that would be at least 5 feet deep, and a maximum of 25% could have, or may have, I think is the word, may have a covered entry stoop that would be a minimum of 4 feet. So again, what we're trying to do is to create some conditions so that the board has an understanding, or at least a reasonable understanding of what it is that you're buying. It's just not a pig in a poke, but at the same time to allow a little bit of design flexibility so that over the 20 or 21 homes that they don't all look just alike.
Mr. Query.
Couple of questions for you. First, what percentage of brick? I can't tell what percentage of brick they are, or if they are brick at all.
I don't think,
Let me go a little further before you start looking that up.
okay.
Are you guaranteeing this is the houses that will be on those lots?
Absolutely, positively not. What I'm telling you,
But- But so this is just for reference only?
right, what we're trying to do is illustrate, again, as I started out, that there is not a builder that has contracted to buy the lots. What the petitioner is prepared to do is to tell the board that these are the kinds of things that the final construction documents will contain. These are the kinds of look you're going to have in the houses. And if there is a condition that the staff has, not that Jay wants to look at house plans, but that the final construction documents have to come back through the board, which I think y'all have done in the past, that you get another bite at the apple, so to speak.
Okay. And to kind of tell you where I'm going is in times gone by when we have these as kind of pictorial, and that's not what you're going to have, then this would not mean anything once you get a developer. You may have the porch that you're saying, but they may not look at anything like these houses there, and that becomes a concern for me. And most of the time, we try to get it boiled down to so we know reasonably what is going to be on it, on the lots. And I've got a concern going forward with you showing this just as pictorial, because we don't know what square footage are, we don't know what the building materials are, and we don't really know what the shape of the house you're going to build is. This is just something that you think is applicable. So I'm just trying to warn you that that's a major problem for me.
Okay.
I'll echo that comment from Commissioner Query. We need to have examples in place so that when we go out to these built houses, we'll see the same thing as what we approved on paper. Also, I wanted to ask you about the offices up front. How critical is that to this development, to have the office in place versus putting 4 more houses in here?
I will give you my opinion, and I'll defer to the petitioner for the final answer, so to speak. The advantage of the offices is it provides a buffer and a transition into the single-family portion of the site. I think there's no doubt that most of this site is single-family, should remain single-family, and will always be single-family. The dilemma that you get into, and this has already happened next door, is that those houses that would front onto either Matthews Mint Hill Road or the houses that would be on the corner aren't nearly as desirable as the houses that are, in this case, sort of over the hill. They're kind of tucked in behind the office part. So, and when I made reference next door, at least one of those houses is owned by a rental home company. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that it tends to be more of a rental market than it does the single-family pride of ownership typical home. And it becomes somewhat of an impediment to the sale. So using office as sort of a buffer/transition from what could be a busy street into a single-family neighborhood is a fairly soft transition. I'll give you that answer from a land use or land planning standpoint.
Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start talking, I'd like to ask the attorney if it's appropriate for me to voice my opposition to this project while we're in public hearing.
Absolutely. Okay,
that being said, I think this is a pig in a poke. I think we've got the offices past the transition point, which is the school. If you go by Butler High School, which we're obviously not suffering from attrition in attendance at Butler High School, you're adding to the problem instead of taking away. I imagine these homes are going to cost somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000. Is that a fair? And to think somebody's going to buy lot 20 for $350,000 with the only separation between them and one of the busiest high schools on this end of the county being a chain link fence, I think that's the acme of ignorance. I couldn't be more in opposition to this project. the traffic jam that these people are going to be in, coming in and out of their neighborhood, both in the mornings and afternoons. They're going to be sitting out here in the audience and at that podium in a year, maybe 2 years, asking for a traffic light because they feel they're being held hostage in their neighborhood because they can't get out. I think this is not only the wrong time, the wrong place, I think it's the wrong project. If it were me and my land, I'd sell it to CMS and let them use it as a natural buffer or something else between this and the next neighborhood.
And just as, that was my question. So you're not necessarily opposed to the office, you're opposed to the project, period?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Higdon.
I'm not overjoyed with the project, but I don't have a problem with the office. There's offices across the street, directly across the street from them. I do think it's a nice break. There are some other concerns with it in general, but I'm not against the offices. I think it's okay.
Mr. Urban.
Well, good. Somebody else is pretty vehement about this, because I didn't want to be the only pain in the arse about this situation. I will say to Commissioner Query's point about the offices, we've had that debate for years. The project across the street does not access Mint Hill Matthews Road. It dead ends. And so there is no, if there was a connectivity where there was an entrance across from another office park, I might buy into the argument of making some connectivity there, but there isn't. You enter further down by the fountains from that aspect of it. So I consider that null and void discussion, and I really wouldn't want to see the offices in that location. But again, deep breath. Other petitioners have served well in front of this board and the planning board before in bringing in the documents in a timely fashion, not showing up on a Monday and bringing in this material, deliberating with the board members, whether in groups of 1 or 3, and talking through this process. And we haven't seen any of this, and you just come up here and say, well, this is what we're going to do. And then, of course, delay the claim, well, he doesn't want to spend the money. Well, every other petitioner that comes before us has 2 choices, spend the money or not spend the money. And I hate it, because I do the same thing as what you do. But we have other petitioners who have spent a lot of time and effort to come up and at least nail down with a level of specificity about the quality of the architecture they're wanting to do, the size of the homes, the whole 9 yards, to the point where they're saying, these images are in the range of where we're going to be with some slight changes. Or they've come back and said, these are the images we're going to use, but to do one better, I'm going to come back and present every single elevation to you for elevation approval down the road. And so somehow, this board hasn't done anything differently in the last 8 to 10 years that I've been associated with it, and you're asking us to do something different. And so that's my rub. I'm more than happy to sort of work through this process, but I think Commissioner Melton is right on target about it's up against the school, so how do we address that? You're talking about I think a great transition, get rid of those offices and have a 100-foot deep buffer to isolate from the noise, isolate from the traffic, and you go into a nice single-family residential development if that's the case. I had stipulated before that maybe this is an opportunity for a different type of housing project, but then you have people behind them who are concerned about that as well. So it raises all sorts of issues, but I'm just fraught with problems from just the sort of technical nature of how this was submitted to the way it's all been sort of playing out. And I do thank Commissioner Melton for sort of hitting it right out of the park from that aspect. I'm not opposed at this stage in the game. I just think it's just fraught with all sorts of problems, and I'm not comfortable at this stage in the game.
Okay, Mr. Query?
Yeah, I meant to mention the offices to you because that has been a continual thing coming before the board, is people wanting that. And you're putting offices right next door to houses. But that's one thing I would have trouble doing. And I feel for you because you've not been before that I know of before, and you're probably not realizing what all has gone before. But the other part is I agree with Commissioner Melton. The people on the street over are complaining to us about the noise coming from the school. And I can figure these folks are going to even be worse. And that I don't see that type of a project being right for that area. I won't say I wouldn't vote for some type of housing there, but what we're faced with right now and what you're showing us is not something that I would want to accept.
Any other questions or comments? Are there any questions from the Planning and Zoning Board?
You mentioned, well, your plan shows 21. You mentioned the maximum
21.
You're committing to not more than 21, so what do you want?
Well, what we struggle with sometimes in a preliminary stage is trying to allow enough room for B and Ps to satisfy water quality. And typically, we have to guess high to make sure that we have a space that works for the B and Ps. And occasionally what we find is that what we allowed is more than we needed, and there actually, in this case, possibly could be 21 lots instead of 20. So we're showing 20. We're sure that 20 works, and possibly there could be one more lot in there. That's why we specified a maximum of 21. Does that answer the question?
You just made a comment about you try to go as high as you can and back down. What you said is you're trying to go low.
No, you misunderstood. What I said is that we have to make sure that we have enough room, or maybe I misspoke. We're trying to make sure we have enough room for the B and Ps. And so it's a little bit of a catch-22. The B and P from a volume standpoint is based on your impervious area. The impervious area is based on your number of lots and how big are your houses. And so there's other stuff that we're kind of making educated guesses about at this stage. So those guesses tend to be high in terms of our runoff numbers, or in terms of our impervious numbers. So what that might mean in reality is that we didn't need a BMP as big as what we had allowed for, so maybe there was room for another lot. That help clarify that?
It helps. The only other comment about it is we talked a lot about early phases, conceptual type things. It just seems to me, and I think it's been echoed by the board, we've come to us too early. There's way too much stuff to the imagination. We don't know what house is going to build there. We don't know how many houses it's going to be. And it should be to the point you can tell us this information. He's looking at stock pictures, doesn't.
Any other comments, questions from the Planning and Zoning Board? Mr. Query?
Yes, let me kind of go back, and I don't know whether the board would approve it or not, but would you like to have a continuance of this till you go back to your clients and discuss it with them before we carry it forward? Or are you pretty sure you own track and you don't?
Can I have 30 seconds to answer that?
Huh?
Can I have 30 seconds to
Yes.
answer that? If it pleases the board, the petitioner would like to ask for continuance of the public hearing.
Okay, Mr. Melvin?
Go ahead, then.
Before we entertain a continuance, I would encourage the petitioner to submit in a timely fashion what we're going to vote on and what we're going to approve. If you're going to show and ask for a site plan that has 21 lots, then submit a site plan with 21 lots and not say we're trying to guess at the most we could do. This isn't a guessing game. This is a 100-year decision that we're trying to make based upon documents that need to be filed, not the day of the public hearing, but in time for staff and this board to review them. I respectfully ask that you figure out whether you're serious about this or not.
Mr. Query?
Yes, would it be appropriate for me to make a motion? I'd like to make a motion that we continue this for 90 days to give the petitioner time to find out what they really want to do.
30 or 90?
Okay, I have to correct that. They said 30 days is the most continuance. And that's if the board approves it, but I made that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Motion been made.
Well, yeah,
Well, we can
we'll
continue.
continue it. But,
If we're continuing, we can do that after we make this
Well,
vote.
you might want to give,
Okay,
if somebody may not be able to be here with the continued public hearing.
okay. So why don't we, let's go ahead and do the public input for anyone who cannot be here on June the 8th. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support, or July the 8th, excuse me. Is there anyone who would like to speak in support or opposition to the motion? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and your address for the record, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. Spoke to you last time on this project and feel like I still don't have quite enough information to go forward, just like you guys are. And I think that's what's prolonging it. But in the neighborhood, our biggest concern is the traffic. We've already got the impact that we can't get in and out now. And I know that we can't have our neighbors locked up and not use their property, but that might be a consideration to you as how this property is used and the density thereof. We've already got issues with school property. We've got issues with school kids coming through our property. This is not going to do anything but make it more accessible. Okay, like I said last time, I'd like to see some nice homes in there. That would be great. But what we've got right now really concerns me on the traffic. Who's the next door neighbors? The kids. How many of you ride around and try to get around teenage kids without hurting them? And what do they have out there? 2,000? Just a guess. So I think you need to consider the traffic, what the town can do with the state or the county to improve that as part of consideration on how we use this. And if you can't, you might have to limit the use of the property just for the safety of the town as well as the commerce. So I didn't know if I'd be here next meeting or not, but I'll try. So thank you for the time.
Could you give us your name and address, please, for the record?
Gary Mullis, 1916, Kimway Drive, Matthews. Been around here since '63.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in support or opposition to this zoning application? Okay. Mr. Query, would you like to repeat your motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we continue this for 30 days.
Until July 8th.
Till July 8th.
Second.
Mr. Miller, you're okay with that. Is there any discussion? Mr. Irvin?
Quick question to staff. I am 99.9% sure that you were very upfront with this petitioner about timely submittals and things of that nature in the usual procession?
Yeah.
Okay. I will support the deferral as requested by Commissioner Query, but this is kind of unusual to extend again. I know the staff goes to great lengths to sort of warn petitioners or give them the due diligence factor of how this needs to be played out. So that's all I'm going to say.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, do we have a motion to reconvene the regular meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is planning and development business. We have a report from the planning board. David?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I have the planning board report from our meeting on May 21st. We had one For the town board action, we had one zoning motion, 2019-2, 433 East John Street, I-1 to R12, 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road, BH to R15, and 11210 Brigman Road, BH to R15. This consists of the three parcels that we voted on them separately. At 433 East John Street, the I-1 to R12, the planning board unanimously voted to recommend approval for a zoning motion 2019-2 433 East John Street, unless the property owner submitted a complete I-1 CD zoning application by May 29th, 2019. This was found to be consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan. At item B, 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road, BH to R15. Our board voted unanimously that the requested zoning motion 2019-2 for 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road not be recommended for approval and found it to be inconsistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan. The last parcel was 11-10 Brigman Road. We voted unanimously to recommend denial, that it was inconsistent with Matthews Land Use Plan. And we had two administrative amendments for your information. The Eden Hall development requests to construct additional detached homes in lieu of additional townhomes. Our board approved the administrative amendment for Eden Hall, finding the request was consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan, and it supports the economic viability of the Eden Hall development and reasonable because it reduces the overall density of the neighborhood. The request was in the public interest as it provided additional single-family within a previously approved development, and it gave David Weekley Homes the ability to build out and complete the Eden Hall home development project. The other administrative amendment was the 300 West John Street, changes to exterior elevation of the approved office building. Our board approved the administrative amendment for 300 West John Street, finding it consistent with the Matthews Land Use Plan, and that there was not a major change in the design first presented during the rezoning, and the mechanical doors and vents would blend into the design. The amendment was found to be reasonable as the changes were necessary for the construction of the structure. And that concludes my report.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, David. Okay, under item 10B1, action to be taken, zoning application 2019-694, Discount Tire to change the zoning from B1CD to BHCD at 1625 Windsor Square Drive. Mary Jo.
Good evening,
How
Mayor,
are you?
council members. I'm good, thank you. This decision had been deferred to this evening, requested by the applicant. On April 23rd, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend conditional approval on the request, suggesting that they work on getting the questions cleared up and changed that were brought about at the public hearing. In this evening's packet, you will find revised elevations from the applicant. This was one iteration of the store for Discount Tire. This is now what they're presenting. They have shifted the building down further away from Independence Boulevard. They have moved the entrance. The entrance is currently right in this area, and they have shifted it down. Here is right about where it is, directly across from where Chick-fil-A entrance is. They are keeping the lobby area in this section, but they have also provided revised elevations. These were the original elevations for the facility. And here are the current elevations. Sorry about that. This is brick, this is some brick veneer in this area, again, some brick accents down here. These are all glass. This faces Independence Boulevard with the lobby area. And then this is the the opposite side on Independence Point Parkway. This north elevation will face Red Lobster. And this is the side that you will see when you come in from Windsor Square Drive. Again, they have added glass bronzed windows on the garage doors. They have put some awnings in place and added some roofing elevation to it. The applicant is here this evening. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Okay,
For staff or the applicant?
well, for staff, let's start with Mary Jo.
No questions.
No question for staff. Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Can they come up?
Sure.
Could
Good
you
evening.
state your name and your address for the record, please?
Sure. Suzanne Todd, 1065 East Morehead Street, Charlotte, North Carolina, 28204.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Urban?
Ms. Todd, thank you. I want to thank you and your group on your efforts to make adjustments and things like that. What I'm going to give you tonight, though, is you have what's behind curtain number 1 or box number 1, so you get to pick. Earlier this afternoon, I received your updated elevations, and again, unfortunately, elevations that come in at the nth hour. Well, I do think you sent some earlier last week, so I'll give you credit that it wasn't on a Monday that I received new information. I think it was only like Wednesday or Thursday of last week. But anyway, my suggestions are, I think your architect or whomever the designer was kind of went overboard a little bit, maybe as an aha moment, or he was getting back at me or something. But I think that the pitched roof is completely incongruent with the overall design of this building, and it makes no sense. So I'm asking that you remove, I'm only one of 7, but my suggestion is you remove that. I appreciate the fact that you added glass garage doors, you added awnings over all those doors. You tried to mirror the rear elevation to match the front elevation, but what my suggestion is that we get rid of these clear story windows that are sort of figuratively trying to describe a second floor which doesn't exist, and then adding 2 awnings that match the awnings on the front of the building on the back of the building. I'm trying to get that balance going back again. I mean, I think less is more. So in reality, by eliminating some of the gimgaws, as I would call them, the pitched roof, and then the clear story windows, where I'm actually saving you some money and only asking you to do a few little extra things with the awnings.
Okay.
I don't know how clear that is for most folks, but
May I ask where this is, where did this come from?
me,
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay,
me. I received the elevation last week, and then the new elevation came out this morning, and I quickly sketched it up and sent it back to staff to ask them to pull it up, as opposed to me taking my magic wand here and showing different things. I thought I would just go ahead and sketch over what I thought was a little bit cleaner and simpler. Again, I do thank them for, the awnings break down the scale, they add a pedestrian level feel to it. The mirroring of the elevation in the front and the back helps tremendously, although I wish the rear elevation was a little bit more articulated. But this has come a long way. If you scroll back and forth between the 2 different elevations, I think you'll agree that this is much improved.
I believe earlier today I sent you the very first submittal, and there's a huge
Yes.
difference.
Ms. DeMint?
I just want to echo what Commissioner Urban said to you. Thank you for working on this. So I like John's suggestions. And one thing, John, I think you didn't point out that you have in your drawing is to move the cooling units that are sitting up on top somewhere that's hidden. The X'd out cooling units. Do you see that? I just wanted to make sure you see on the very top.
Oh, That,
Yes.
that is, my understanding is that is part of the, that's sort of the visual, that's that metal, the pitch roof part.
Oh my gosh, I thought that was like an air conditioning.
I
unit.
missed
Yeah,
it
do
too. I
away
thought it
with
was a
those.
still or something, I didn't know.
Gotcha. Then that will take away that. Okay, awesome. That's
I
terrible.
agree. I don't know how you got there with that. I thought it was air conditioning.
I did too.
Mr. Miller.
I thought it was air conditioning as well.
It's like, hide that.
Can we scroll back to the site plan, please, in black and white with the streetscape? Yeah, right there. I have a question with the new drive. Is this a median, and will that need to be adapted if the outgoing drive is there and here? Will any changes need to be made there?
No, that is the current median that's there, and that will stay there. That median will stay right where it is.
If they wanted to go to Chick-fil-A for lunch, would they come out, turn right, do a U-turn, and then right in?
Correct.
Is that a Texas turnaround?
We're out the back.
Okay, it seems to be a concern.
It's going to be a right in, right out there.
Okay, thank you.
As I said with the Boston Chicken 22 years ago, people are going to come out of there, they're going to go to the left, go around that, go straight into the Chick-fil-A, is what they'll really do.
Mhm.
You'll see very few people go down and do the U-turn. So, Mr. Melvin.
Thank you, Mayor. So that it can be in the public record, I think I saw the answer, but was your tree save area revised to save 100% of the trees instead of the percentage?
What we have committed to, unfortunately, because this is going to be a demolition and then a rebuild, there are trees, existing trees in the parking lot now, as there will be later. So we are not able to save 100% of the existing trees. However, we have made a commitment in our notes that says that we will have the same, we're committed to having the same tree canopy that exists there now or better.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Yes.
Mr. Query?
Yeah. Go back to the marked up, if we can. I reckon what I'm asking, are y'all agreeing with that as marked up?
Absolutely. If I could get a copy of that, I can take that straight to the architect, but we will agree to that.
Okay.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Urban, then it's the removal of the pitched roof, which also looks like an air conditioner from the side elevation. Is that it? And then the awnings matching?
That is correct.
Removal of the two windows.
Yeah,
Awnings and it's.
there are these two clear-story windows on the left and the right on that rear elevation, what's called west elevation, getting rid of those and replacing them with two awnings.
I'd like to make a motion, but I don't know that I'll remember all those.
Perhaps we could ask
References
Mr. Urban to make the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there'll be a 101 class on mechanical unit floor plan reading later. Let's see what we got here. So I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we approve 219-694. The zoning action is most currently amended as approved and has been found to be consistent with the land use plan. It is consistent with the Matthews land use plan and allows a retail use to replace a former restaurant location along US 74. It is reasonable, the rezoning is reasonable because it allows for the vacant restaurant to be demolished and a new retail building to be installed. The rezoning supports the continuation of a building healthy commercial base in Matthews with the provisos that the pitched roof element on it would be is it the north elevation? Let's be precise here. No, not north. It would be, keep scrolling down. On the south elevation is removed, and on the rear elevation, the two clear-story windows are removed and replaced with two awnings to match the awnings on the east elevation.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mr. Urban, what about the north elevation?
The north elevation is facing Red Lobster, and I'm banking on the heavily landscape buffer there to do its job, because it's by no means four-sided architecture, but I think we beat them up enough.
Well, excuse, I wasn't clear. I'm talking about the pitched roof.
Oh, well, what you're seeing
It's on
in that
one
little X,
side only.
that's beyond, it's on the other side of the building. So the graphic was improper. They were showing what's beyond, that should have been left off.
Okay,
It's just,
if you say so.
if that really is what they plan to do on the north elevation, we have another problem.
I
All right.
confirmed that too. I confirmed that with our architect as well, because it looked like there was some sort of an
Yeah, it's not.
pitched roof on that
Yeah.
side as well, but it's just the visual from the back.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor, all those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Next item is item 10B2, motion 2019-2, to change the zoning on 3 parcels as follows. A, to change the zoning from I-1 to R-12 on a parcel designated as 433 East John Street. Change the zoning from BH to R-15 on a parcel designated as 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road, and change the zoning from BH to R-15 on a parcel designated as 11210 Brigman Road. Mr. Camp, would you like to discuss any of these, or? Okay.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Melton.
Thank you, Mayor. Basing the comment on the language in staff's memo to us, this is one submission, one application. How are we allowed to pick apart one zoning application when they're three in
I would
one?
make separate motions for all 3 of those.
Okay.
It came to you as a single application or
Correct.
motion, but you need to vote on them individually because there's separate zoning categories at separate areas.
All right, understand. Thank you.
That was my same comment.
Okay, all right.
I didn't like voting on all of them together. I wanted to do them individually.
Okay, so, Mr. Camp, we have received information on 2A and 2B for conditions for
Yes,
those
so-
particular properties.
Correct. Under the consent agenda, we have new rezoning applications for 2A and 2B with public hearings that would be set for the meeting in September.
September the 9th.
September 9th, yes.
Okay. So with that, working in good conscience with the petitioners, would it be prudent for us to perhaps continue this or defer this decision for 30 days as you work through that with the petitioner?
Yes, we agree that a deferral is the best course of action for the board at this time on these items.
Yeah. We can continue to defer it up till then. Okay. And then continue to defer the 11210 Brigman Road property as well as a set.
So we did recommend denying that one, but if your board wants to continue to evaluate this entire motion, you could defer decision on the entire motion. That's the board's pleasure.
Mr. Melton.
Thank you, Mayor. I should know this, but I want to ask once to get it into the record. If we deny the motion as recommended, Jay, does that allow the petitioner to come back to us within a year?
We are the petitioner.
We are the petitioner.
Yeah, we're the petitioner.
You have the right to bring it
So
up
we
anytime.
can, if somebody else were bringing it to us and we denied it, they couldn't, but because we're denying our own petition, we can come back.
Correct.
Okay, all right, just wanted to hear that out loud.
No, good question.
The recommendation is to deny.
Mr. Urban?
I get the 433 East John Street, and I get the bowling alley, which is, after talking to you, it's kind of surprising that there's no response, but there's a physical structure there. So let me just, hypothetical. The 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road one, if it is deferred, what rights does the property owner have, and maybe it's a Charlie question, but I'm going to go to Jay first. Let's say we defer for whatever the amount is, 30, 60, 90 till October or something like that. We know that they have been talking to an extended stay company. What's to prevent them from moving forward with the submittal and the permitting of said project?
The property still is owned BH, so they could proceed with submission of site plans, development plans for review by the county and the town, if they so chose to.
Okay, so the only way to, so if you denied it, would it stop that? Or at least put it into a condition in which it has to be now vetted differently?
It's vacant property. It would now be zoned R15.
Okay.
And that particular use you mentioned would not be an allowed use anymore.
Well, I'm subject to want to support staff's recommendations, and I would hope that the attorney representing that particular parcel is doing this above board and for all the highest and best uses for cooperation with the town, that we don't see this thing circle back around and bite us. But I think I commend the planning board in its robust discussion on this conversation, but the thing that was weighing heavily in the back of my mind, and I think a lot of other board members, was the discussion of the extended stay. And even though the board would like to see a hotel there, they would like to see it of the nature that's supportive of the E&T and not supportive of that extended stay model that's adjacent. And that's what's really the crux of my thought process here from that aspect of it. But as it stands right now, I just want to be clear about that, but I will support staff's recommendation at this point in time.
Mr. Query?
And I'm going to ask the attorney because I'm confused on which way we're going on these. If we're going to vote to deny the change, then it stays at the current zoning. Is that correct?
You're talking about on C.
Yes.
It would stay at the current
C's the
zone.
bowling alley.
But that doesn't mean that it has to be bowling. It could be anything, or something could be started in the meantime. And that's not what I had envisioned happening there. So I think you've answered my question.
Mr. Melton?
Thank you, Mayor. Say, again, using John's words, hypothetically, we deny C and defer A and B to a public hearing in October. If at some point during that public hearing in October, if a citizen or anybody in the room voices their opposition to this, does it then kick the decision or continue the public hearing until the first meeting in January?
That's, the General Assembly changed that. That's no longer in effect, that law that deferred those things, conditional zonings that had opposition to them during the election season. That portion of the statute has been deleted. That's
Okay.
no longer a hindrance.
Thank you.
Mr. Higgins?
Jay, can you help me understand how the town's recommendation, your initial recommendation is now recommended to deny? This is the town's recommendation, and then you're saying to deny your own recommendation?
Sure, I think I can clarify that. If you'll recall back at the planning conference, we did, no, it's a great question.
Sorry. That's what I just keep thinking, looking at.
So, if you'll recall at the planning conference, I know you digested a lot of information at the planning conference, but we provided what I think I termed a pared down list of properties that the board may want to consider. In 2018, Ms. Ingers provided a much more lengthy list. These properties in this area, because they are the gateway to the NT district, we did recommend the board look at these. As we've evaluated this, as we've taken to the planning board, Planning Board's concern was that this, in fact, being inconsistent with the small area plan, has the legal effect of taking these parcels out of the small area plan for the area. And looking at all these items, looking at the E&T overlay, which the board directed us to draft, and we have set for public hearing next month, the Planning Board felt strongly that rezoning at this time was not the best course of action for the town. So it was a deliberative process, and ultimately we support our Planning Board and their ultimate recommendation. So I know it was.
Is this, I guess, is for the attorney, is it appropriate or possible to get a comment from the parcel's attorney regarding the intention for future development there?
Sure,
And specifically?
Well, the attorney here, I think, is with the B, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me, basically, under 11D, we will be accepting applications for item B for the property under item 10.2B, and an application for the item under 10.2A. Okay? And the petitioners have, or the applicants have submitted those. Essentially, as I've been sitting up here for so many years, I always take the attitude of trust but verify. And when I'm playing a game of chess, I'm not interested in, taking away my plays. So I think that what I would like to see here is for us to move forward with absolute confidence on both sides that we're going to have a successful conditional zoning on these properties. But I would like to ensure that we do have this motion in place so that we can take action should that situation change abruptly. And the way to do that, in my view, is to defer motion 2019-2 in full for 30 days. And if we're making progress on the zoning applications, we can defer it for another 30 days and get up to the point of the public hearing. My concern is that if we leave a gap of 90 days open, the zoning is still BH and anything can happen. So, again, trust but verify.
So you're asking, you recommended we defer the entire motion?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Query.
Mayor, I understand where you're going with it. I have a concern with that because we didn't know anything about the extended stay. All of a sudden it showed up, and they could have come to us and made some notification, which was not necessary, but they could have at least let us know what was going on. And that, to me, is very inappropriate at that location. And to me, we should go forth full steam to make the change without any delay, and they can always come back and ask for a change with conditions that they want. I am concerned about the trust thing is good, but we don't know who the attorney's here, and I expect him to be honest and all, but we don't know that his client would do that. So we have, once it's gone in place, then we're hung. So that's just my concern on that.
Well, Mr. Query, I would not be adverse to such a motion, personally. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. I might be a slow learner, but I'm really confused as to why these three were grouped together. There's three separate topics. We've been talking about them since last October, as I recall. The only thing they have in common is the petitioner being us, but they're three different topics, locations, etc. For example, 433 East John, I understand our motivation. But in the consent agenda, they are wanting to apply for I-1CD, which would allow them to continue, as I understand it, and restrict other uses because of the conditional, which seems like a pretty good compromise to me. On 1364 Matthews Mint Hill Road, they're requesting for an early designation to the ENT, which I thought was our end goal. And so that seems like they're working in good faith. And if we haven't heard on the other parcel, which I understand to be the bowling alley, then okay. But that's a different topic, and they're not on the consent agenda. Mayor, help me understand, if we defer it 30 days, isn't it still in the original zoning, which means they can do whatever they want? So I don't understand the motivation to deferring it.
Well, the idea would be the fact that they've submitted these applications and to try and work cooperatively with the petitioner or the applicant. Now, I don't want to give 90 days because the property still stays BH zoning.
Okay.
And a lot can happen in 90 days.
So the idea then is to motivate through the consent agenda, accept the application and watch progress?
Right. And then at the end of 30 days, we could take action if we wanted to, or we could defer.
And so we would be working with 2 out of 3 of these individual properties, right?
Whatever the board decides, yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Query?
Sorry to keep coming back, but I have a concern about leaving these open for any period of time. Because if we talk to our police, which we have, and the number of calls we've gotten to the one extended stay there has worked them to the hilt there. And if something goes wrong and another one gets in there, then I'm scared we've really just doubled down, and we really got no way to go back because we've given the time, because it stays at the old zoning. And that's my concern. The bank has said that it's overworked them out there across the street with that. Our police department's been overworked because of that, what's there, and I hate to open it up again to something else again. And that's just my concerns. They can come back on a regular basis and give us exactly what they want to do.
Mr. Higdon.
So a question for our attorney. What does item 11D legally bind the owner of that parcel to, if anything?
It doesn't bind him to anything.
So they could still go forward with a...
He could go in for a permit as of right. I don't think that he will, but you're right, he can do that. The property owner could do that. Even though he has a zoning amendment in place.
Mr. Melton?
We've danced around this, but can we ask the attorney who's representing the property owner to give his word on public record that they'll not move forward on anything until we work this out?
I think I asked that about 20 minutes ago.
I mean, let's quit playing around.
Exactly.
Is that legally binding?
Well, if he's making a comment, yeah. Well,
binding on the zoning?
It's not legally binding.
Not legally binding, but it certainly does go a long way, knowing that they have no ulterior motives for this.
Please state your name and your address for the record.
I'm Bob Henderson, the oft-mentioned attorney for the Brigham family. I can tell you definitively that there are absolutely no talks going on with an extended stay or any other hotel at the moment.